Pro Tools certificate program. Can you hear me okay, by the way?
Uh-huh.
Okay, yeah. They have a Pro Tools certificate program, but half the kids use Reaper though, because they just like it better. It's just a quicker workflow for them and everything.
Yeah, the last time I used Pro Tools was Empowered.
Yeah.
When I had a PC, 2, I had a M-Audio interface.
Right.
That's all they allowed you to use was Pro Tools Empowered for the M-Audio thing.
Yeah.
Then Pro Tools 9 came out, and then you could use any interface that you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
But by that time, like, I think Pro Tools just kept getting more and more expensive.
Oh yeah.
Like, whatever they charge now, I don't even want to think about what they charge now.
Yeah, I think they just want you just to pay $20 a month for life or something like that. I think they just want you to subscribe forever to it.
That's all. That's
right.
All I do.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So yeah, but so it's pretty interesting. I try to stay pretty basic. I use Logic, and I used every version of GarageBand up before using Logic. So I trained myself for about 10 years on GarageBand, every version, and then I ended up buying. I went to a studio here in Clearwater, or I'm in St. Petersburg, Florida, but I went to a studio up the county in Clearwater. It's called Clear Track Studio, and they had all the bells and whistles and all the video and the social media that you'd want a studio to have. And it was so devastating after we recorded there, because my wife and I were doing our folk music duo there.
Yeah.
And just really just trying to record a nice acoustic space, something that you'd be able to do very naturally because you're an acoustic guitar player. You have ears for it. And I think that it takes a special engineer to understand that. And so it was kind of unusual after it was all done. We were kind of we were kind of jaded by the experience a little bit. I felt like they recorded the guitar the way that they were taught how to record a guitar, or how they were told how a guitar should be recorded, which is like, 12th fret, 10, a foot away kind of thing. But, usually whenever those type of rules are applied, and even someone like Roger Hudson will even say, he'll say, well, as long as they just listen to where the guitar sounds the best in the room, like those are all great ideas, the 12 inches away and the XY exactly here and everything. But when it comes down to it, every room responds differently. Every guitar projects a little bit differently. And depending on how much room and how much guitar you want, you know all these things, but these are fundamental studio things that I feel like a lot of kids in studio programs, or students, I should say, and studio programs, they don't really get a chance to go to that large acoustic space and say, okay, we're going to record this today. We're going to record a grand piano. So they're so used to lining in, and they're so used to all the things to plug in through, and they're preamp crazy and vintage tube crazy and microphone brand crazy. And I have to say that most of that stuff is just really over the top, I feel. I feel like there's such a I feel like and the issue that with anything goes is that we can get a little gear obsessed, and for some reason we'll think that the drug that we need is that next piece of gear. Oh man, if I have that next piece of gear, I'll get where I need to go. And so like I kind of overshot the runway. I bought a bunch of Universal Audio stuff. I bought an Apollo 8. I wanted to have 6 inputs for some reason, and
for one guitar, right?
Right. For it's overshot the runway, and I'm like, oh yeah, let me buy the Neve plug-in, and let me buy the Universal, this and this and that. And when it comes down to it, I went to a friend's house that has a nice little clean setup, and he's like, why do you care about tube preamps and all this stuff? He said, you're recording a clean acoustic guitar signal. He said you'll be surprised how much tube that you really don't want to hear in your sound before you want to add it in. He said, but once you record with it, it's done. It's set in there. It's crystallized in there. And if it sounds, so anyways, that was, gave me some perspective. And it really, really teaches me that the ears are what the studio engineer needs to have. And how much are someone's ears valued at? More than the entire $50 million studio, really,
Right, yeah.
Quincy Jones's ears, whoever, great ears. And so that just kind of taught me a lot to not be so gear savvy. And, I don't need that vintage Neumann microphone. I can get a clean enough sounding microphone in a nice enough space with a decent guitar. I don't need a double top guitar, and I don't need $2,000 tuners on it. I don't need Versace shoes to go pick up my guitar with. All these things become distractions, and I feel like we get really good at shopping for things.
That's half the fun of it, isn't it? Though,
right? Oh man, it's the catch, man. And
it's like it's almost you have more fun researching the gear versus actually buying the gear.
Oh yeah. And that's what I love about a lot of your podcasts and a lot of your articles. Like, you have a lot of gear, and it's great because, like, I don't have the resources to go through all that gear, or even the time to even figure out some of the patches you're doing. I'm like, man, that's really cool. And of course you're exploring that on a different level. You've really just taken it in, towards a lot of us. We played electric guitar and collected guitars, and then with classical guitar, you either just get taken by it, and then maybe you even rebel against it, or maybe you recover from heavy metal music and become a classical guitarist the rest of your life. There's no real there's no one path that makes it clear, but everything can kind of become a wormhole, as we find. And it's interesting because there's so many left turns that we can go on just in the career itself, and picking our songs and kind of venues, what kind of projects we want to choose ourselves, apply ourselves to, I should say.
Yeah.
And so it's just pretty interesting to see all the things. But I feel like, some of my older students that come in with, man, I see some great guitars every week. I mean, I see a 1939 Gibson L5, and the next week I'll see a 1950s ES 175, and they're so into the hunt, for the gear. And then when it comes down to, like, oh yeah, I just gotta get that one piece, and then my wife cuts me off, and then it gets cut off. I'm like, all right, man, well, man, you got plenty of gear to play this stuff with in your lessons, and they just want to talk about gear more, so that's okay, and that's fine. And I definitely have moments of obsessing over it, but I try to really, stay a little more centered as time goes on. And if you own a house and have kids, you obviously know that there's a lot of there's a pecking order, Right. So anyways, so I started out, playing electric guitar. I mean, I started out playing, Zeppelin, playing, like my mom said, if I played Stairway to Heaven, she'd buy me a 12-string, like that was cool. The gift, That's so fun. Yeah. So like, so that, so she wasn't very good in me in taming my craving, because she's like, oh, well, here, like, let me try to get you a job at the office that I work at, after school, and you can come and help me clean the offices afterwards. And we'll just make that a new guitar fund for you, so even though she's a struggling parent, she still wanted me to have those options. And I thought that was kind of cool. And then I would live in those guitar magazines, Guitar World. It's out of print now, Guitar for the Practicing Musician. That was great. Yeah. Guitar Player's been around forever. Guitar Player wasn't as fun though when I was a kid. The fun articles were in, like, Guitar for the Practicing Musician. Like they had the Steve Vai article and the John Petrucci article, and every once in a while I'd come across this classical corner kind of thing, and they'd say, oh, like this week we're going to take a look at Nothing Else Matters, and they talk about how. And this particular columnist, his name is Robert Phillips. It's kind of funny. I teach some of his students now. And actually, I actually played at his vow renewal service. But when I was 10 years old, I was reading his articles and Guitar for the Practicing Musician. And I was learning new words. I was, I'd always say, hey, Mom, like, what is this word? And she's like, well, sound it out. Equalization or whatever it was,
Oh, yeah.
And so I kind of formed a lot of my vocabulary on these guitar magazines, and the longest words I learned at first were those technical terms, And so I kept seeing Carcassi's name. I'd see Carulli from time to time mentioned. And then I'd always see, I'd always see references to Yngwie Malmsteen and all the classical players. And I was pretty curious with that. But I have to say that I was really just fixated on what I saw on videos of bands playing. And like the first real, like, moment that I felt like I had an aha moment, my big bang was, I have an older sister that's 6 years older than I am, and so since there's a bit of a gap there, like she she's kind of a third parent to me in some ways, especially since we had like a single parent household growing up. So she said, hey, so there's gonna be a package, and I was like 8 years old or so, 8 or 9 years old. I was 9 years old. And she said, there's going to be a package on the door. It's going to be really heavy. but put it inside. And she said, and just don't open it. You know, they're my records. Columbia House, 12 LPs for a penny. That was when it was LPs for a penny.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So, and man, 12 LPs are heavy.
What year was this?
This would have been 1987. I was born in 1976. Yeah. Okay. So 1987, 12 LPs for a penny, and LPs are about to like fade off. They're about to drop off and never see them again. And we're about to see CDs, and we're about to pay $25 for them in like 1988 or 89. So anyways, so I opened the box up. I can't help it. I mean, I'm like, what's in this box? It's so heavy. I didn't really, you know, I was just like, this can't just be all records. I opened it up, and I saw this album. Oh, and I still have the book for it somewhere. I might have to grab another source for it, but anyways, maybe later. Anyways, so there's this album, and it's black, and it has this crazy guy holding this other guy, and this other guy is playing this polka dot flying V, right? It's Randy Rhoads and Ozzy Osbourne, right. And I'm like, wow, what's this? And, man, my sister's listening to this. What is this? You know? And so I mean, I go further, man. I take off the wrap off the record, and I open it up, and it just keeps folding out, and it keeps opening, and I see all these cool pictures, cream colored Les Paul, white flying V, and the stage looks like a castle, and there's like, you know, all this stuff, and there's this really articulate letter that Ozzy wrote to Randy, which he might have had a ghostwriter seeing his book, you know, reading his book, but anyways, but he was you know, he wrote this very endearing letter and said how young Randy was. And I was like, man, like what? I mean, I've got to hear the greatest guitar player in the world. Apparently, this guy's the greatest guitar player in the world. Apparently, according to this guy. So I go into my sister's bedroom. Man, once again, like I could be killed for this. Go into my sister's bedroom.
Just don't read her diary or anything, right?
Right, exactly. And so she had this record entertainment system, okay, and it was something that came out like Sears Roebuck in the mid to late 80s, and you basically put a record on it or a cassette tape. It was right before CDs came out, so and it had like these dance lights that would go on. So it was like you had your own like little, you could like dance in your bedroom and play a record or something. So you know, it was bizarre. Her and her girlfriends would go in there and play records really loud, and they'd be singing the Don't Stop Believing and Journey and Bon Jovi stuff, you know, all the time. And so, man, I drop the needle, man, and I hear Crazy Train. I'm like, what? You know, I mean, like, I'm scared, but I'm also like, what? But I'm also like, I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't have opened any of this stuff. So this just fits right with this moment of rebellion, you know. And man, and then I listened all the way through to the end of that side, or to the end of the album, and it comes up to that really intimate little tracking of D, that acoustic guitar piece. Yeah. And it just, man, that was such an education for me, you know. And I was a kid, and I was 9. Yeah, it was 1987. That album just came out, and
Randy was classically trained.
He was classically trained.
His mom was a teacher.
Yeah. And the thing is that I've been, you know, so I've lived with that music for years, and like, you know, and I learned D. You know, like whenever I was a kid, I don't know if I can remember all of it. And then it had all these beautiful voicings I remember in it. It was kind of like a little Renaissance piece. He does little quotes of Bach, like he does this little, you know, which everybody knows, which he does it like, but we all know this is. And then somebody would say, oh yeah, from Pick a Destiny, you know, or whatever, you know, which is cool. But, you know, Bach Bray was awesome, you know, or Jethro Tull, you know. And so it's cool is that I started hearing all those little things in there. And then I also heard some cool little things like his electric licks were also in there. Like he went like these great little pull off things he does, like the second position. You know, and it was just beautiful. And I thought, wow, if I can learn that would be pretty awesome. Now, no one knew what that song was and all that. And but then I, you know, I was 9 years old. It was time to learn guitar. So I went to the guitar store. My mom, you know, she was, like I said before, a single parent. She got enough money to get a guitar up for me. And so we went into the store and they said, all right, well, he'll study with David. And David's like, all right, here's the book everybody uses. It's the green or the blue Hal Leonard book, or Mel Bay book 1.
Oh yeah.
And it, and it has all those sparkling Stella, which is Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. It's got, the Frolic or whatever.
If you don't start with that book, you're not doing it right.
Well, I'm telling you, man, like, right. And like, I'm such a nerd that, like, I'll go to like a used bookstore sale and I'll see like an earlier version of it for like 50 cents, that's like from like the 60s. I'm like, oh, I'm totally going to buy that Mel Bay book 1. And, and it has all the 60s letters on it that look very psychedelic, Mel Bay, kind of thing. And so, it's just really cool. And then, if I fast forward, 9 or 10 years, or, when I'm 18, I'm at this music store in outside of Tampa, in Brandon, the suburbs outside of Tampa, and I'm teaching Mel Bay Book 1, and I'm teaching Crazy Train, and I'm teaching Sweet Child of Mine and all those great music store hits, and then I'm kind of and then from that moment on, I think I was kind of ruined because I was able to make a decent living at teaching. I was able to learn a lot of things by ear and scratch them down. And
so you were teaching other kids like at a young age or something, or? Yeah.
Well, it's kind of funny because a lot of my students, not a lot of my students, but a lot of students that have kept up with me over the years, they were some of the first batch of students I had. And so some of them would have been 7 when I was 16 or 17 in some cases. When I think my first student was when I was 15. I started teaching kids in the neighborhood for like $10 a half hour. And my mom's like, $10 a half hour, Jimmy. She's like, minimum wage is like $4. This is like the early 1992, Yeah. And I said, yeah, Mom. I said, but you've been paying, $17.50 a half hour. I said, I've been doing this half my life now, I was so serious about it. And she's like, well, okay, I guess you can use the spare bedroom to teach your lessons out of. And that was cool. And I did that. And then when I could drive, I would drive from house to house to teach students. And then I started taking my own guitar lessons at the college. And then that's whenever, but that was triggered by another event, and that was going to see the Guitar Trio. And, and that was Al Di Meola, Paco de Lucia, and John McLaughlin. So it was kind of, it's been kind of an unusual winding road as a guitarist. I don't think anyone ever has the same straight trajectory, unless they have a parent that's, heavily involved in the music industry, but everyone else, like someone says, oh, like no one tells you how they make it. And it's like, well, it's kind of an impossible thing almost because, everyone's track to whatever level of success they're trying to achieve is based on their own personal connections and the people that they know and their own abilities and, abilities of obtaining things and getting in. And if there was just a league that we signed up for to make it, we would all be lined up to sign up for it. So we do all these things that we do that we try to say, well, maybe this will be the thing. It's like, oh, well, no, that really wasn't the thing. Well, maybe this will be the thing that might not be the thing either. So what happens is that as we go through our careers, we can take all these left turns being distracted, or we can just say, okay, well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm working towards these goals, and I'm just going to just do what I think is right to do. I'm going to do what I feel is like my own self-investment, my own investment in myself. And so what happened is that I was learning, I was practicing these Randy Rhoads licks. Fast forward to I'm 15 years old or so, and I've got those first students, and I'm playing Crazy Train and Eruption, tapping and stuff, and thinking I'm getting around it pretty well, and by thinking I got it, thinking, oh man, like this picking thing isn't too bad or whatever, just being a cocky 15-year-old, because what do you have to really worry about at 15? I mean, first of all, hormonally, you're like borderline a criminal, hormonally, at that age. So it was pretty interesting to channel all those feelings into music, and which I did, and which my friends did. And we formed our metal band that performed and did a lot of things. We actually got a singer that was a few years older than us, who was already experienced, and he got the gigs, and we would be playing in these clubs like the Brass Mug in Tampa, which is where Green Day played in 1993 before they got huge.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I saw Marilyn Manson there. I snuck in when I was 16 in 1993. And I saw Marilyn Manson singing in a death metal band there. He was it was before he was Marilyn Manson. He was his actual name that I can't even remember. And the band,
Ryan something.
Yeah, and the band was something of the lines of like a monstrosity, or it was one of those kind of metal long bands, long band names. If it was written nowadays, it'd be written in that font where you can't read anything, or something.
Yeah.
But and so that was the first place I ended up playing, and it was playing with like a rock band the first time that was. Like there was an older drummer that I was recommended to, and the next time I played, I had my own band. It was guys mostly my age with our slightly older singer who was getting us gigs, and man, we probably played about 90 gigs that first year, and we went to the studio and we recorded an EP, 4 songs.
Yeah.
And we went to Morrisound Recording Studio, which is a big studio back then. It's where all the big metal bands recorded, in Tampa. We have the privilege or distinction or whatever of being the death metal capital of music. So death metal has never been my music, but we had a scene and a driving force for it for some reason, and it really took on, and it became an international, a global thing. And you had bands from Brazil and from Scandinavia coming to Morrisound to record, and that studio eventually got purchased by the Trans-Siberian Orchestra.
Really?
Yeah. They liked it so much. I guess they just wanted us to buy it and stay there and record from there. And they have a great gig. They work about 2 months a year, on the road. And outside of that, they're just recording and doing, the other things that they do. So it was cool to be around all those bands. It was cool to be around the surviving members of Nasty Savage, which was a big metal band that all these bands were big in Europe, of course, in Japan. And like the Spinal Tap, every Spinal Tap line applies to these bands too, I'm sure. Okay. And it was this cool, playing for some of their rough metal fans that were older then, that when I was 17 or 18 playing in scrawny kid with, dangly hair, thrashing, I was playing this band thrashing for these really rough, Nasty Savage fans in some cases that were like bikers that were like, in their 30s, and they were just, and I just remember it just being like, man, I better keep thrashing, and I better keep my guitar chugging along to keep these angry people happy, to keep these angry people still looking angry,
And what kind of setup did you have at this time?
Okay, so my first setup that I had, I saved up enough money from that little after work job that my mom helped me with to buy a Les Paul Standard Cherry Sunburst, 1976 Cherry Sunburst. I was listing the flyer for $500, and so that was 1992. $500 I bought that. And then the first amp I ended up buying was like an Ampeg VH140C. I had a Marshall Lead 100 MOSFET. I was thinking that if I had the brands that my heroes had or something, and Paul Gilbert was an Ampeg carrier then, I think, at that time. And but he had the tube one. I didn't realize that, and everybody was using that 88 MP1, and everyone had a Marshall JCM 800, and I couldn't afford a Marshall tube amp. So I had those, and then by the time I was in my original metal band, I'm like, man, I got to get tubes. And then my singer was like, oh yeah, but you also want like a processor, because he said the guitar player in my old band, he had this noise gate, and man, he would cut off his chords, and the drummer would grab a cymbal at the same time, and it was powerful. And he said, you should find something with a noise gate so you can really get a lot of distortion. And I was like, cool, right on. So I bought and it's funny because I see that you're a bit of a PV guy too, and so PV just launched a bunch of rack gear that same year, and they had this thing called the Profex 2, I believe is what it was. It even had like a where you could put like some kind of memory device in it to capture memory, and then also I had a PV Classic Series 6060 tube power amp split, and so I had that, and I had my MIDI foot controller. And I was really able to create a large, sonic kind of fabric of the band at times. Whenever I had the solos, some of the solos had the expression pedal features put in there. And so, yeah, so I was programming and I was doing a lot of user patching. And so that was cool, all on an LED screen that would hurt your eyes.
This was in the early 90s.
Yeah. So this is probably about 94 now, 95. Okay. Yeah, about this time. Yeah. Yep. And so, yeah. And man, we ended up getting, we lost our drummer and we ended up getting an even more virtuosic drummer, just like that was just passing through. And he was great. And we ended up opening up for Overkill, which is a pretty big band by that time for us to open up for. They would have been one of those founding thrash bands.
What was the name? What was the name of your band?
Our band was called Schizogrin, like crazy smile, Schizogrin. And people would always say, "Is it Schizogrin?" I was like, "No, it's not that. It's Schizogrin." And people always put a T in it. And I'm like, "No, it's schizo, like schizophrenia, Schizogrin." And me and the singer came up with it. And then we had an artist draw this really funny kind of emoji. Well, I guess we kind of invented the emoji. It looked like an emoji, Schizogrin. Right, and everyone had this little thing on their cars. We had T-shirts made, and it was like a happy face, but it was like wearing like sunglasses. It had like this weird kind of like menacing kind of grin to it.
The most important thing that we have to know is there any music online anywhere that we can listen to? There is. Great.
Okay. So yeah. So there are. There are definitely MP3s, and what I was thinking about doing is starting a Spotify page for Schizogrin just to do it, just to launch it out there. Totally. So anyways, yeah, and I'm sure
sign up for DistroKid or something and just release some music and put some classical stuff out there.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of cool. Yeah. So some of those songs have like a classical intro to them, and then they'd have like a kind of a Pantera style riff going on, And man, and like that band was awesome. I mean, we loved that band, the guys that were in it. But we were all like 18 years old, and it was kind of getting into where it's like, okay, well, so are you going to do this band, or are you going to get a job, or are you going to go to college? What are you going to do? What are the guys?
The ultimate question, right?
Yeah. What are the guys going to do? And of course, the bass player, like one of the girls that was hanging out with us ended up moving in with him in his bedroom at his mom's house, and his older brother's like, "Get out of my house! What's up? Get out of the house! Go be responsible, be your own man." And he's like, and he basically just said, "All right, I'm going to leave." He's like, "All right, I'm going to quit the band. I'm moving away to my other brother's house." And I'm like, "Okay, all right." And so then the singer was like, "Well, we already lost our drummer. We replaced him, so I can talk to this guy." And I'm just like, at that time, I just got so exhausted. I'm just like, man, I said, I think I'm done. I said, because I can just imagine that we're just going to just keep putting this back together every time. And I was starting to wanting to play more self-accompanied acoustic stuff. I was listening to all those great Unplugged albums, Alice in Chains Unplugged, even Nirvana. Yeah, Nirvana Unplugged, man.
Eric Clapton.
Oh my gosh, come on. Massive. A massive recording. And like those recordings that I bought the CD and I bought the Hal Leonard book, the note for note transcriptions. Oh, and man, I mean, like I love every note of those. I think those four that we mentioned are probably the most incredible, or those three or whatever. Those are probably the most changing for me. So there was a lot of acoustic music that was coming out at that time. And so I was just kind of feeling more of that. And then the bass player, we would meet up every once in a while and go to concerts, because we were best friends since we were 7 years old, and we still pick it up like we never spent a day apart, even though it's every 10 years we'll talk. And he said, and basically like I would take him to a concert and I'd say, "Hey man, you got to come back down to Tampa, man. I bought us tickets to go see Tool, And I can honestly say I've seen three out of the whatever 5 or 6 Tool tours. So I feel kind of privileged by that. And then he'd buy tickets for a concert, and we go to that one, So it was kind of cool. We were keeping our friendship going, and we're still talking about music. He was a great bass player, had a two-handed approach that could work really well at times. Had a great slap style, had a great Steve Harris style running kind of lines, kind of things, steady pulse. Anyways, so he said, "Hey, I've got a concert for us to go to." He said it's a little bit different than anything we've seen. I'm like, he said, "But I think you're gonna like it." I said, "Yeah, who is it?" He's like, "Al Di Meola." He said, "It's called the Guitar Trio." I was like, "Right on, man." So anyway, so we have to go across the Skyway Bridge to get over here to St. Pete. I was living in Tampa at the time, and the Skyway Bridge goes so high over the ocean. It's like, it's a scary bridge. If you look up Skyway Bridge history, it's crazy. Anyways, so I come over here to this side, which is now like my kind of paradise that I live in now, our little sleepy coastal community here, and man, Mahaffey Theater, beautiful red seats, beautiful theater. I'm like, this is the nicest place I've ever sat in. I've never seen musicians play in a room this nice, kind of thing, looking around. And so Al Di Meola comes out, or John McLaughlin comes out first. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yeah, man. So he comes out and he's got this nylon string guitar, and he's got some kind of crazy pick that he's using with it. And he has a MIDI controller, and he steps on it, and it's kind of holding out like some chord, like a kind of thing, and he does some kind of, he's something blindingly fast. I mean, like faster than I can imagine. And he's playing the whole time, and he does some melody, but a lot of kind of shreddy, kind of almost like an Indian flair, really exotic, right. Yeah. real beautiful. I mean, kind of like totally beyond me, honestly, beyond me. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. I've never seen anyone do that before. And then so next was Al Di Meola. I'm like, yeah, man, this is who we came to see. This is awesome. And he's got a similar thing, and he steps on it and does like some kind of African rhythm kind of patch, and he starts doing some kind of really crazy kind of strumming thing, percussive thing at first, and then he breaks into some kind of flamenco thing. And I mean, man, I was just pounding my palms together at the end of that. It was so good. I was like, man, that's who we came to see. Now here's that Spanish guy that no one's heard of. Okay, it's Paco de Lucia, and he walks on stage. He grabs his guitar. He pulls the microphone in front of it, and he just starts playing some kind of tremolo thing. And I was like, yeah, whatever that is, whatever I just saw, I want to do that. And I don't care how to do that. I don't even know how I'm gonna find it, but I got to figure that out. So I buy a Paco de Lucia CD. I bought their CD, and then I bought one of his. And I was like, man, I got to find someone to teach me how to play like this. And so I end up going around to music stores, and I said, hey, does your guitar teacher teach this kind of style? And they said, oh, our guitar teacher teaches all styles, And I'm like, cool. I'm like, can you play this? And he's like, well, he's about to come out in between lessons, so maybe you can ask him, And so I would typically meet like the cool like dude, guitar teacher that's probably a shredder, probably a great musician in all respects, and I'd say, hey man, and they're always nice. Hey, what's up, dude? Yeah, I can teach you. I'm like, hey, well can you show me how to play this? Oh, I've never heard of that before. Let's take a listen to it. And these guys would listen to it, and they'd just be like, I don't know, man. I don't know where, I've never heard that before. And I'd say, yeah. They'd say, like, you need to go to college to learn how to do that or something. I said, really? He said, yeah. He said, I don't know where else you would find that. And I thought, well, man, I guess I'm going to go to college then.
Yeah, the average Joe teacher at a local store, I mean, yeah, they're not doing tremolo type techniques and
right. So and I was trying to find it. And so I eventually found a guy, a flamenco player that was actually literally here in St. Pete, and he's still playing well. And he was still playing, up to last month, every week at this downstairs flamenco club that's underneath a very top-rated Spanish restaurant called Ceviche. And so you can go in there and see him play this ripping flamenco. And so so back when I was 18 years old, a lesson would come was $50 for an hour, and that would have been like $90. Oh, yeah. And so I would save up, and he didn't write anything down. He's like, oh, his Spanish was English was very broken up. He's like, hey, Yime, the rajiado, and he'd say raciado, he'd be like rajiado, and I almost couldn't even understand what he was saying. I had to get used to it, and then he'd show me how he would fan out his fingers, and that was a bizarre technique to me. I had no idea how to do it. And I paid $50 just to kind of just watch his hands, the whole time. And go, and so it took, because he's the kind of guy that says, oh, you just do it like this, because that's how he learned. So anyways, it was pretty unusual because I was used to teachers that wrote things down, and so it was really hard to learn from him, but I did learn a little bit, and I learned a lot more about how to listen through accents to try to hear what people are trying to say. So it was a good cultural lesson for, a cracker like me, And so, from simple beginnings. And so anyway, so I ended up going to the college, Hillsborough Community College here in Tampa, or in Ybor City, right across the bay here. Yeah. And I saw John Demas, guitar teacher, and I opened the door, 6'9" Greek guy. I said, "Hey, can you show me how to play like this?" I had the Pocket de Lucia CD. He's like, "Oh yeah, man, you've come to the right place. Come on in. We'll take care of you. We'll get you scheduled." He said, so just make, and then he told me what to buy. He said, buy the Segovia scales, diatonic major and minor scales, buy the Frederick Node guitar playing book 1. And he said, bring your metronome with you. And I was like, what? And he's like, you don't have a metronome? And he's like, he's like, how have you been playing music all this time? And I was like, I've always had a drummer, kind of thing. So I had to get, and he said, footstool and 2 hours a day, or you're wasting my time. I'm like, okay, I can do that. I can do that 2 hours a day. And so, I remember just the first few lessons, I was devastated every week. I was just kind of like, I'd go in and I'd want to show him how fast I could play the tune. And he would say, you're not even doing it. You're just going through the motions. And I'm like, what am I not doing? And, he taught me what practicing slow was. He gave me Carcassi number 7, which I'm sure you did whenever you were over at MTSU. But and it's a piece where it starts with this little tremolo deal, this PAMI. And I probably had it for a week or two, and I was like, oh man, I'll show him. And my hand's bouncing. And he's like, you're not, and then I was like, well, what am I not doing? And he said, you're not practicing slow. I'm like, but the piece says allegro, and I'm playing it probably at 100. He's like, you don't understand. That's not slow. You don't know what slow is. He said, slow is 50 beats per minute. And he had this metronome that was the scariest look. It was the scariest sounding metronome. It almost felt like it was like from the Cold War, this Franz metronome. Oh, and cool. So when I saw this at an antique store, I'm like, I'm going to buy this to remind me of my feared guitar lessons of my early college experience. And it has a great click to it. It's a Bakelite, so as long as I don't eat off of it, I'll be all right with it. But it has a great sounding click, and it's very pleasant to hear. I don't know how loud that is in here. My earbuds are noise canceling, I bet. So he showed me that slow wasn't, or when my hand bouncing, he showed me slow as this. It was, the hand was still and slow was going. And I never knew that could be slow. I thought, well, I mean, I should be able to play at that speed. Like there was something, are you sure? And he's like, no. He said, you want to play that slow so that you put those little spacers in when you have longer notes. And he said, it's not a life sentence. He said, you just got to do it until you relax. And then eventually I took on to it. But man, the culture of knowing what slow was, just the idea of what slow was. And I asked students to play things slower all the time. I'm like, and then whenever I break it down like that, they're like, you mean that's slow? I'm like, yeah, that's how slow you have to play. So it took some time just getting used to that.
You're learning technique.
Yeah.
Playing it that slow.
Oh, exactly. So
you're learning muscle memory. You're learning all kinds of stuff that your hands aren't used to doing at all. There's nothing natural about playing guitar. No, exactly. There's nothing symmetrical about from one hand to the other. The roll. There's nothing symmetrical about how our bodies hold the guitar. And so it was really an education for me. And I was dying to show him that I knew other things better. Which is the classic thing. It's like, I'm really not an idiot, kind of thing. And I can do all these things with my band. But he's like, but after a while he said, well, this is what this is. He said we all do other things. He said, I'm Greek. I play bouzouki. And he said I scream out opa every Saturday at a Greek wedding. He said, and sometimes I'll play a Greek wedding and
the middle of Alabama. He said, because we're the only Greek band who can play them. And he said, I don't get my classical guitar to those gigs. And I didn't worry about winning over my classical guitar teacher about how well I could play my SG. And I was like, okay, cool. Lesson learned. All right. Thank you. Taught me a little bit about he
understood where you were coming from.
Exactly.
We all just want to rock deep down inside, right?
Oh yeah, man. Exactly. And it was so cool. Like one day after I went through his lessons and I did recitals and I was finally where I was part of the veteran core of his students, after a couple of years and this one day he just shows me he's like, hey man, check out what I'm listening to. And he rolls down his window of his car and it's like, it's like this Zeppelin 2's blasting or whatever. He's like, man, I love Jimmy Page, And I thought, cool, man, he still listens to everything, he still listens to his music, And so it took me a while, I think that as students, we think whenever we're in this formal education situation, we can often feel like we are, we often feel like we want to show the teacher what we know as well, so that the teacher knows that we know stuff too, just so that we have a base. But then the teacher's like, well, I can't really entertain just letting your knowledge dictate what we do, because then you wouldn't be learning anything, which is understandable. And then also, someone's like, oh, well, I wonder why you can't do this or this or that in the guitar program, in the music program, why you can't just do your own music. It's like, well, that's called a composition degree, and a composition teacher will, watch out for what you asked for. Cause I had to composite. I went through that little alley too. And I said, oh man, maybe I should do composition. And, in my junior year, I said, yeah, let me take a couple composition classes. Then I'll really know how to really write the guitar really well. And the composition teacher was like, all right, I want you to write a 3-movement sonata for woodwinds. I'm like, oh, man. And he's
don't even get to play your own instrument.
Yeah. He's like, and make sure that you have the alto clef in there. And I'm just like, oh man, so I'm just like moving lines. I'm counting where middle C is. I'm just like, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. And then I said, well, you know what I'll do? I'm going to go to jazz band. I'm going to go to jazz band next semester. It's college. It's the buffet. Oh. And so I take jazz band, and the guy's like, he's like, all right, man. So this is going to be like, you're probably much going to stay on your first 4 strings. You don't want to get in the bass player's way. You don't want to go too far up the fretboard. You don't want to get in the pianist's way. He said, I just want you to comp Freddie Green stuff. Kind of thing. And so I'm like, okay. So I start playing and I start comping and I realize, oh wow, I'm the snare drum. I'm the percussion section. Mm-hmm. I'm like, well, when do I get to play like Joe Pass? It's like, well, Joe Pass is a solo jazz player. He's not playing with jazz big bands. There's not one big band Joe Pass recording. You want to, and I thought, well, how do I get to that? And then somebody else said, well, you got to become Joe Pass if you want to be like Joe Pass. You got to learn tunes and play for some for mobsters smoking cigars and say play Stella by Starlight, come on and play for your life, that kind of stuff and so and so I thought so how do I ever get to this? And then I realized oh wow, if I really do want to play the most guitar I can in that academic situation, I really should take advantage of what my teachers are showing me, and which I was always a pretty good student in that regard. So anyways, so that was like what led up to me going to MTSU to meeting you, and it was pretty interesting because all of a sudden by that senior year I was playing for that author Robert Phillips's Val renewal and I had a gig playing at the Vizcaya Renaissance Festival, which is the biggest, one of the best funded Renaissance festivals in the country, which is kind of funny.
Right. Were you at like 4 years in Florida? Then because I thought you were a grad student when you came to MTSU.
Yeah. So whenever I just did a community college AA at Hillsborough Community College, and then I finished my undergrad. Yeah, I finished my undergrad at Florida Southern College, which is in Lakeland, middle of Florida, and that's where I studied with like my community college's teacher's teacher kind of thing, and then that was great because the teacher at Florida Southern College, Mark Switzer, he was a great teacher, and it's funny because if we fast forward about 18 years from there, he retires and says, hey, give Jimmy a call and see if he's around and available, because I'd like for him to take over if you're interested in it. And so my old theory teacher called me up and said, hey, please say yes. I'm like, Miss Barchet? And she's like, yeah. She said, please say yes. Dr. Switzer's retiring. Please, he wants you to take over the guitar program. And I thought, yeah, I'd be honored to do that, So that's kind of a nice 180, or everything comes back around kind of thing. And so now I feel like an old man whenever I talk to my students at Florida. I'm like, well, back when I went here in 2000, it's kind of funny because that freshman was like, I was born in 2002, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
like half of our students weren't even alive when we started playing guitar.
No, yes, it's crazy, and so it's really a perspective changer, and it's funny because like along the way, now I'm the college professor, and then now I have the kids that are like, yeah, have you ever heard Pantera? And I'm like, yeah, man, this is old music you're talking about, and he's like, he said, oh, so you've heard Dimebag? I'm like, yeah, man. I said, yeah, that was my high school soundtrack, grunge was my high school soundtrack. I didn't like grunge at the time because I felt like the guitar playing wasn't as good. Until I heard like Alice in Chains and Soundgarden. I'm like, oh wow, yeah, that guitar playing's real good, kind of thing. But yeah, so it was just it's kind of interesting how things come full circle. So yeah, so by the time I meet you, I've gone and I've played this Renaissance festival, and I saw this lute player playing, and he was amazing. And I was like, man, I got to follow that guy. And it was Billy Elverton. It was our old teacher, and right. Fantastic. And so Bill was playing, and I thought, man, this guy, why isn't this guy famous? But of course I'm thinking that I'm a classical guitar player looking at a lute player saying, why isn't this guy famous? And everybody's probably looking at me saying, what world are you in? It's like, yeah. So anyway, I go on after him, and I'm barely playing Renaissance music. I'm playing, really this guitar. It's not even a Renaissance guitar. And he said, hey man, I like your technique. Can you teach that? And I said, yeah. He said, so what are you doing? How old are you? He said, you look young. I couldn't grow any facial hair then. And quite yet. And I said, I'm 22. And he's like, oh, cool. He said, are you in college? I said, I just graduated. He said, grades good? I said, they're okay. Like 3.4 or something like that. Yeah. He's like, it's all right. And he said, well, hey man, I'd like to offer you a teaching assistantship at MTSU if you're up for it. He said, if you can teach your technique, he said, I'd like to have you in the program. He said, well, we have a lot of diverse players, and he said, and we have, he said, I have a couple real virtuosos that I'm working with. He said, and I think you'd be a good addition to it. And I thought, well, man, that's a pretty easy audition. It already happened, and the offer came, and
virtuoso, i.e. Salome Sandoval.
Yeah, and Matt, amazing. Yeah, Matt Palmer. Yeah,
Matt Palmer, dude.
Yeah.
Shredding on the classical guitar.
Yeah, I mean, we had great players, and and talented composers, and just a great diverse base of players that I really enjoyed. And then I met, and what's funny is that before I left for Nashville, when I'm just packing up, I'm tidying up my lessons, and here before packing up in 2001, and I have a student who's he wants to work on some nylon string kind of tunes, and he had a Roger Hudson piece in a fingerstyle guitar magazine. Yeah. And it's funny because I didn't even know Roger was there. And my first week over at MTSU, I ended up, Bill's like, oh, and this is the adjunct. This is Roger Hudson. I'm like, oh man, I've already taught a couple of your pieces already, and it was just it was so bizarre, and then of course if you fast forward,
he was really
oh man, Roger was great, and I have to say, when I finished my doctorate in 2009, I got a full-time job, and in 2010 they said, hey, we need a second guitar teacher. Who would you like to have for a full-time teacher? I said, man, let's see if Roger Hudson's available, and he still has that job. So I'm glad that I was able to reconnect with him.
Where did you get your doctorate?
Oh, okay, yeah. So at MTSU, whenever I knew you, or I met you, I got my master in guitar performance, and then from there, I studied with Dr. Elverton, Billy Elverton's teacher, Bruce Holtzman, over at Florida State, and that was a whole different education for me there. That was the opposite of Nashville, and in fact, that first fall, I really felt it. I'm like, oh, the leaves don't change. Oh yeah, I'm back in Florida, kind of thing. And oh, it's hot. Oh, it's like the summer just kept going. Yep, back in Florida again. But but that guitar program was very international. It was there was Peruvian, English, Chinese, Cuban. There was every Brazilian, every walk of life in that guitar program.
Well, what was the thing that Roger ended up being a part of?
Oh, Roger. Oh, the school there. So after I finished that, after I finished my doctorate from Florida State, I got hired at Manatee School for the Arts, and that's where I actually had Roger come in and be a second teacher.
Was that in Tennessee though, or was that in Florida?
No, it's in Florida. It's down a little south of here. It's back over the Skyway going south.
You're saying he moved to Florida? Yeah.
Roger's been in Florida since 2011. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I didn't know that. Well, I know he taught at Udawal, not Udawal. What was that other school in like
Georgia? LaGrange. Oh, and Austin P. And
Austin P. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, Stanley Yates,
Austin P. and MTSU at the same time.
Yeah.
But he packed up and he moved to Florida.
He did. He packed up his whole family.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. And his kids really flourished here, and he's doing really well. So, yeah. And so Roger, he just wrote me a tune. It's called Old Florida. And so
cool.
it literally just came into my inbox this week. So I'm going to start uncovering it. It's got a little bit of ragtime in it. It's got a little bit of a kind of a swinging kind of eights kind of feel to it. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm really enjoying having friends that are composers. And just being able to have a personal connection with that.
Jimmy, one thing I'm noticing, like the voice is great, but the guitar comes through all glitchy. So what I'm going to have you do is, like, I know you do some Instagram kind of stuff. So just send me some video clips that I can like intertwine throughout the interview here.
Yeah, that'd be great.
You actually play like really well.
Sounds good.
Because I don't want a glitchy guitar sound.
No, I understand. I appreciate that.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about the guitar that you have right now. I mean, what do we have here in front of us?
Man, so the first thing I noticed about this guitar when I first saw it was this headstock shape.
Oh, that's pretty.
And man, the tuners even have the same shape on them as well. Oh, so this guitar, I heard this luthier in one of my first master classes with the LA Guitar Quartet, and Bill Kennengeiser, who is actually the classic guitarist that you hear on Crossroads, the movie Crossroads. He actually was playing a guitar very similar to this, and I remember just how big and full it sounded. It was a cedar top, Brazilian rosewood back and sides, big scale, 660, I believe, and it's a little wider, 2.1 inches wide over here. Big frets. I had Joe Glazer in Nashville that put big old honking bass frets on it, and so it's great because I can with the frets, they're so high.
Joe Glazer at Corner Music.
Absolutely, and Joe, he has the Plek machine. It was an early Plek job, and man, like I really found that I just never ever have to touch the fretboard. At all. I never feel any of the wood under my fingertips. It's all string, and it was something really nice to get used to. Actually, I originally thought that if you played a scallop neck, it would feel very, you would just feel the pressure of the string, and it wouldn't be very comfortable. But actually, there's a lot of comfort in it. But maybe that's the nylon strings being kind of soft anyway. And then I have a medium tall frets on my Martin. I have a 00 or a 00028 Martin as well, and they both complement each other pretty nicely. The Martin's a 12 fret too, and so it's a very similar kind of scale. And so, anyways, but this guitar has a very cello-like sound. The maker, he's got a couple of little areas where he just kind of shows off his lutherie a little bit. Okay. And then something that I've been getting a lot of questions about is my guitar strap. After I left college, I lost the footstool and never found it again. No, I got rid of it, and I had a clamping device that just put dents in my guitar. Yeah. I had suction cups that would pop off during the first passionate chord of a tune, And I thought, you know what really works for me is just a guitar strap. It's what I was used to. I'm also a tall guy, and it's and just having your leg up this high. I mean, you know, I would hobble off stage and with a leg that was asleep, and it was pretty dangerous. But what I found is that I had the guitar straps kind of put the same buttons, kind of like where like Martin and Collins put their buttons, you know. And it's really underside. It's very comfortable. I had a K&K pickup put into it. Just in case if I ever wanted to amplify it. And I have an external preamp. I didn't want to put any batteries or latch anything inside because it'll just weigh it down. But I have to say though,
something happens to an instrument when you start cutting holes in it and stuff.
Yeah, and glue stuff too. Oh yeah. It's just not good. I didn't want to cut a big hole into it. So what happens though is that with the strap, I can play standing up or sitting down, and sometimes I get tired of sitting down, and I'll just play standing up. I used to follow my wife around the house, you know, talking and playing, and after a while she said, "Stop following me with the guitar, please. Just 1 minute, stop following me." I'm like, okay, stop. I'll get away from you. I'm sorry. Do you really,
ever put the guitar down? That's the question. Do you ever put it down?
Oh man, it's right. It's pretty hard to, and it's really funny because I wondered how I would age with this. I was wondering how I'd be at 40 years old like I am now. I was wondering if I would still have an interest for it. And man, I still can't stop thinking about it. It's always it's always echoing in my head. There's always a piece playing. It's like it never stops. It's and so I love that. And my interest does, change. I mean, I don't want to just play the same hour of classical repertoire. I love Americana music. I love dadgad. I love Celtic guitar playing. I love Travis picking, Doc Watson, Deep River Blues, stuff like that. I love that kind of music as well. I like singing and playing too. Just kind of things that suit my range. And I've had moments where especially when I was in college, where Roger Hudson called it. He said, "Well, you had to go through your college cleansing stage where you didn't play electric guitar and you didn't listen to electric guitar and you really bathed in the culture of classical guitar, and you might have even started drinking wine for the first time because you thought that's what people did that listened to that kind of music, and probably realized that you didn't like wine after a while or something, So anyways, so it was, and I have to say that, so I would say whenever you met me, I was probably in my most intense classical mode because I was really just so hungry for every ounce of it. And I'm still pretty hungry for it, but of course, like we all get a little, we all feel like we're like down the line as we start hearing every young virtuoso come out and say, well, that guy's going to have a great career. Well, that guy's great. This person's great. This girl's wonderful. She's beautiful and great. I can't compete with that. And you'll just see all these great players. And then after a while you realize, oh, wait, well, it doesn't invalidate my skill or my level. I have my own thing that I do with this, and maybe I should just celebrate that and not worry about a race that doesn't exist or that no one's paying attention to. So it's pretty interesting how we are as musicians, and also a bigger, I guess, topic or issue or musicianism is that we often think that the kind of music we're into represents 98% of all music, and then everything else is 2%. I know some blues musicians that we have a really thriving blues scene down here. We have a Suncoast Blues Society that has like 600 members. Anytime a blues band plays somewhere here, they have like hundreds of people that come out, and then I'll hear the blues guitar players talk to each other. I have a cousin who's really good. He plays in the Betty Fox band. And anyways, he's a crazy good guitar player. He's kind of like Danny Gatton, if you've heard of that guy. He's just got this crazy technique. Stevie Ray Vaughan, Danny Gatton, just fingers for days, And he's a great player, and he's around a very high level international group of blues players. And I'm kind of lucky to be able to sit in with those guys and just talk to them, not play guitar with them. They see me as a different entity. He's a classical guitar player, even though I'll happily play blues with them, but they don't want to hear my blues. So it's all right there. So,
right.
But I'll hear them play, or I'll not hear them play. They're great players, but I'll hear them talk about other blues players. And there's a little bit of the arm crossing. There's a little bit of the, oh yeah, those guys over there do this, and they're not really blues, and we're really blues. And every once in a while, I'm just thinking like, you guys are yuppies. You're not really the blues. You guys are a bunch of white dudes playing the blues. You know,
well, this is interesting. Let me ask you something. With your classical mind,
yeah.
What do you think about when you play blues? Like, do you think like more like B.B. King style? Do you do like Albert, like any of the Kings? You know, like what do you think about when you play blues?
Yeah, well, B.B. King he's a big one because what I think about, and it took me a moment to think about it. It took me a moment to come around to it because I think that's how we all are. It's all cumulative anyway. But like my earliest approach to blues was like Jimmy Page. Those were all I remember. Oh, this is another pivotal point in my training. 15 years old, guitar for the practicing musician. The very back, it would say little classifieds. The back, and it would say 16 years old, looking for musicians for a speed metal band. And then the next one would say, hey, do you want to learn the greatest licks of Jimi Hendrix, Jimmy Page, Jeff Beck, and Eric Clapton? Send $15 in an envelope to James Pamplin, and he'll send you his booklet, 50 hot licks. And so $15 in an envelope, 22-cent stamp, that's what they were back then, send it off. Yeah. Weeks later, this big stapled packet comes in, the big staple on it, flip dog ear every page, and it starts with that fifth position pentatonic thing that we all know, right? Oh, yeah. And then it goes into all the different kind of burning kind of variations of it. And I remember thinking, oh wow, this is cool, So I learned all those licks, and it said, oh, this lick is in the style of of Jeff Beck. And then I'm like, oh cool, well, let me learn that. Let me see what that is. This lick is in the style of Jimi Hendrix, And so I was good at reading the tab, and so I was reading music for about 6 years by then. I was still kind of looking up at the notation too in the tab. I wasn't just relying on that, which I'm glad reading music is a cumulative thing. I feel, it takes you a long time just to be able to look at it and have a physical reaction to what you see. And so anyways, that was my first introduction to it. So all the first blues I played was like, it was like Jimmy Page rock and roll, kind of song or whatever, rock blues. But then as I started studying it and I started really listening intently to the blues, there was a moment that when I was getting my doctorate, I started celebrating every recital with buying myself an electric guitar. And so I said, so my gift to my first doctoral recital will be a Gibson Carina Flying V. Boom, got it. Nice. My gift to my second doctoral recital is a Gibson Goldtone GA30 amplifier. Boom, got it. And so I just kind of did that. When I turn in this paper, I'm going to buy a Telecaster. Got it. And I was single, and I had a couple scholarships coming in. I had some students, and a gig would come up, and if I said, oh man, I wasn't even expecting that gig, that would be my Stratocaster right there. And I was just buying gear. And what I was doing though is that I was listening to a lot of blues. I was buying the gear, and then I was starting to learn about the wattage of my amplifiers and their application. So I ended up buying a Top Hat 5-watt amp. It's beautiful. Oh, nice. I got like a 1960 Vox Student amp that was 3 watts. It had like car stereo tubes in it. They're like tiny little guys. It had like a weird shaped speaker. It sounded awesome.
Being a 5-watt amp, I mean, it's not going to have any headroom at all. Like you turn it up, it's just dirty, nasty, gritty.
It was great. Yeah. Oh, it was so great. Yeah, and if I was putting my Telecaster or my Strat into it, I could just get all these things. The Gibson, I always felt like the Gibsons were always a little too heavy-handed for them. They'd always drive them way too early, but that's just Gibsons anyway.
Oh yeah, the pickup's a lot hotter.
Just pushing them way in. Yeah. So I really felt like the Strat and the Tele started suiting my blues later on. My teenage blues was all, I might as well have been, Les Paul Marshall, big fat sound. And then I would say that as I got older, the blues became more Fender-y sounding, cleaner. And I was listening to more blues. I was listening to blues songs. And what I learned and what I do now when I play blues and when I solo to blues now is I try to think of lyrics and phrases. I actually use a little bit of funny enough to use the term solfege. But I'm not singing do re mi la. I'm not going do re mi fa sol la ti do re mi. I'm not doing that. But I might go and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and 2 and 3 and so I'm kind of thinking almost rhythmically and almost like a conversational style blues. And then if I want to seal something off, I might put a little quick lick at the end or something, or maybe not, and every once in a while I'll try to break my form and maybe not end on a fast little lick or something, maybe end on, something, more subtle. And I guess my blues has gotten a little jazzier now. I like a lot of intervals. I like thirds and sixes, and I like little resolving things. And then of course, most of the blues I play these days are all finger style blues, Travis picking, self-accompanied kind of stuff, and that seems to be a little bit different though, because you're holding down the bass end of things, and you're kind of playing more in a ragtime kind of style. But so I'm exploring a lot of the Florida blues players like Blind Blake and Tampa Red. Those are great for my own just for my own benefit. I'm trying to get closer to my roots in that kind of way. And something else that led me to that, though, is that when I was getting my doctorate, I was really realizing that my colleagues all had they were all researching topics that were very directly related to them. So my Peruvian friend, he was studying a Peruvian guitar composer. My Brazilian friend, he had Villa-Lobos, he had all kind of great stuff to choose from, Assads, all that stuff. My English friend, he had all the lute music of Dowland and everything, and all the English stuff, to choose from. And it kind of left me feeling like how I felt in some of those competitions, And in some of those competitions, I felt like I would, after a while, I kind of felt like I was a patron. I felt like, man, I'm making it to the finals. And Bill was great, by the way. When I was at MTSU, he joined societies so I could do the competition, and I won some when I was there. And I mean, he was a very supportive teacher in that way. And so I definitely have to give him a little bit of a thank you and some props for doing those things for me. And so that was very formative. And then outside of that, whenever I go to the larger competitions, I'd often make it to the semis, to use the Big Lebowski expression. I'd always roll my way into the semis, And then sometimes I would ask the judges. I'd say, hey, if I didn't make the finals, I'd say, why didn't I make the final, or if I didn't win first prize, I'd say, how come I didn't win? Which I could understand why. I mean, you go to these competitions, everyone's great, Okay. And I would hear things like, the guy that won, he's a Russian playing Koshkin. He's like, you're not going to get any more Russian than that. I was like, oh, man. And then I go to another competition. I'm like, hey, well, what could I have done to do better? They said, well, the winner was an Italian playing Giuliani. You're not going to get more Italian than that. I'm thinking, how can I win at this game? I'm American. What is classical guitar about being American? What is American about classical guitar? And man, did that really put me on a search? And it led me down a nice rabbit hole that began helping me really reestablish my identity as a player. And that was, I found the first significant guitar method published in America. And it was published by a very unlikely candidate and a very unlikely source at a very unlikely time. And so once again, in Bill's office, while I was a grad assistant, I had a key to the office. I had the whole archive, the whole file cabinet. And I had a chance to look through all Bill's books and find music and stuff. And he said, yeah, just, go down, make copies of it and just put the originals back. I don't, care what just as long as you put everything back, I'm okay. So I would go through his, I copied everything in that cabinet. But anyways, I saw this Pioneers of American Guitar anthology, and it had guitars from America from the 19th century, early 19th century. And I thought, well, that's cool. Because America became America in 1776. I'm like, so early 19th century, we're looking at some pretty good chance that we'll have an early one there, an early method there. So anyways, I found this guy, Justin Holland, and I say an unlikely candidate at an unlikely time, because he was black and he was born pre-Civil War to a free black family in Norfolk, Virginia. And he went, and as I read his biography, he went to Boston and studied classical guitar with this guy, the Spanish guitarist, Mariano Perez. And from Boston, he decided to go to Oberlin College because they were one of the few colleges that accepted black students. And he was accepted as a guitar performance major. That's right. And he studied guitar. And back then, as you know, probably from knowing about old acoustic guitars, especially like Martin, they would often make guitars that were stamped by the music store. And you'd see like the music store name instead of the maker, the luthier. And so there's this big one up there in Oberlin in Ohio. It's called Brainard and Sons, like Brainard and Sons. And so Justin Holland walks in there one day. He wants to get some things published. And this is kind of what makes him my hero, is that he goes into, and he sees Old Man Brainard. Old Man Brainard's in the back, and he won't turn around to even say hi or even say, how are you doing? Can I help you get out anything? Right. And he was just ignored, but it was like the 1870s. It was literally during the Civil War right now. And so he goes home and he says, all right, well, then I'm going to mail him the arrangement that I wanted him to see if he'd publish and see if he'll publish it. Old Man Brainerd gets the arrangement in the mail and says, oh man, please send as many as you have. Justin Holland gets published 600 times in that decade, in the 1870s. So Justin Holland becomes what some believe is he was the first professional musician in America, by some regards, because he did music solely as a profession, and it wasn't what he did at the end of the day, like most musicians did at that time, because he had limited resources. Pretty cool, So I found his method, one of 500. And it was listed on eBay the last year of my doctorate on my birthday. And I said, I am going to buy this method. I don't care how much it is. I will buy it. This is my research. This is I can republish this. I can. Do
you remember how much it was?
Well, I proxy bidded it up to $600. Okay. Wow. It sold for $65. Yes. So yeah, because my wife, my then girlfriend, she said, so how much are you willing to bid for it? I said, $600. She said, really? And I said, yeah. I said, well, this is my research. This is my doctoral. This is my significant source for my research. I said, this will give me every green light to get my treatise done now, to get my doctoral document done. Yeah. And so what I was able to do is I was able to do a paper on the significance of this method. It was almost 200 pages. It had basically, since there wasn't really a copyright law in the 19th century, you had a lot of copies. Poor Carulli, that poor Ferdinando Carulli, he got ripped off the most. He had like the first method, and then whenever Carcassi's method came out and Soare's method came out and Aguado's method came out, they all stole his archetype. They even sometimes they would even recycle some of his preludes and just put them in as their own. And Justin Holland did the same thing. It wasn't necessarily an insensitive thing to do back then. It was a pretty standardized thing to do, which is why they eventually created a law to prevent it, because it was so widely done. And it's like, whose intellectual property? The term,
So interesting. That's really cool.
Yeah. So that led me down a path. And he spoke 5 languages. So he would go to Haiti and he would speak to Haitians about African American rights and about education and such. And even though there was a lack of rights at that time, because the abolishment of slavery was, he was able to go with Frederick Douglass and basically tell everyone, hey, you're free now. Don't allow yourself to be kidnapped, and don't let anyone kidnap you. Don't let anyone steal your children anymore. There's old spirituals called "Wade in the Water" about black families telling their children to wade in the water and to hide under the water, and so they don't get stolen from them. And so they don't, yeah. What? Yeah.
Wade in the water, children. Oh, dude. Oh, yeah. That
Come
makes
on.
Total sense now.
Right. Now, I will say that some of those spirituals, I will borrow some of my blues licks from those little da 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 da. Because so what I learned is that as a long way of wrapping up that blues approach question is that what I learned is that we really have to try to mimic the sound of the human voice and to be lyrical, which go figure, right? But it really does make us have to, try to think about, how that functions. And I think of B.B. King's playing, he approaches his solos almost like a trumpet player, does, and he's like, he's not laid back like Miles Davis, where he plays behind the beat. He kind of stings it, but he's not as virtuosic like a Charlie Parker, but his approach to the music is very intense like that at times, especially younger BB. Gosh, he was so good,
That's real cool.
So yeah, but I really do love that. I love the fact that blues is improvisational. I love improvisational music, and I love to try to keep some elements of even being a classical guitar player improvisational. I think that the ability to noodle is an amazing ability. The noodling ability to play around a chord, to do the Dave Rawlings kind of thing of chromatically wrapping around a chord, in chord tones. I think it's a very attractive way of playing. Kenneth Pattingale from the Milk Carton Kids, I love his approach to lead playing. He's very textural. He plays across the guitar very beautifully. And so yeah, there's just so much music out there, and I really enjoy your band as well. I got to say that song that Murder Bell that you guys had on SoundCloud was fantastic. That you guys captured that great rock and roll sound, just that great like straight rock and roll sound. And I remember hearing that, and I probably listened to it like that same song like 10 times a day. I was like, man, it's like the Black Crowes or better, it's just so good, So anyways, awesome.
That has a lot to do with the singer and also songwriter Dan Fenton. He's just one of the best. I know he's great. So
yeah, and your guitar playing was always very, every time I hear it, it's very tasteful, very it's very enjoyable to hear, well chosen notes, nice conviction in your phrasing and everything. So I enjoy that. Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna steer us toward the end here, but I want to talk about because my journey through I did jazz guitar at a community college, and I came to MTSU and studied classical.
Yeah,
I was still studying classical at the community college as well, but it was mostly jazz because I got a scholarship to play jazz guitar for 2 years.
Nice.
Like, all right.
Wow.
So it pays for my my schooling and whatever else, and
that's awesome.
That was great. But my issue, and this is where my question is to you. My issue has always been my nails.
Yeah.
And with me and fingerstyle guitar, like I can't keep the nail either strong enough or shaped properly to just keep it going long enough to like really sustain a good practice regimen. So talk about your nails a little bit as a classical guitar player and how important they are to you and what you do, and just kind of the things you have to go through on a maybe daily basis to make sure they're snuff.
Yeah, daily basis. That's really where you nailed it. And every teacher I had
had hold them up a little bit. Let us see your nails there.
And every teacher I had did my nails and told me the way to do them. And so basically, what we're looking at is it's kind of like a new moon that's kind of slanted over. Mm-hmm. And Scott Tennant calls it a ramp. And basically, the string, the placement of the string is right where the flesh and nail come together. And then whenever I apply pressure, the nail makes contact with the string like that.
Ah, okay.
And so I try to play from the same spot on each finger, because the fingers, the ends of them themselves are very different. The lengths of them are different. If I put my fingers on the strings, and if I just let them sit like this, well then this finger's bit way too much this way around. This finger's straight on, and this one is a little bit leaning. And so what will happen is that this finger will sound very dark. This finger will sound very bright. And so all three will sound very different. So the only thing I can really control is trying to simulate the edge to try to make that similar. And so that's why whenever you're looking at a classical guitarist play, often their index knuckle is kind of leaned inwards towards the top of the guitar. and it kind of gives them to where that they can play on the same side of the fingertip, or where the nail and the flesh come together. So we have basically, and the nail sits at the most intricate end of quite a mechanism, because first of all we have our posture, we have our positioning of our arm, and then we have our placement. And then the placement is where the magic happens, which is where the flesh and nail make contact with the string, and then with pressure they release the string. And so one thing that has to really, really be consistent for the placement to sound right and be consistent is that you have to make sure that the surface of the nail is always very fine, and there's never any ridges, even on the side, as far as up as you can go. So you have to get one of these colorful, buffers, three-sided ones. And then there's also
me and Sally's View Supply. We're tight. We're good friends.
Oh yeah. And it's funny. Like I'll walk in there and I'll say, can I get some accelerator and some super glue? And then or I walk in there and they're like, what do you need? And I'm like, no, I know what I need. It's right over there. They're like, what do you get? And I'm like, oh, I know what it is. It's over here. It's the accelerator. And I go up to the counter and they're like, you making model airplanes? I'm like, yep, making model airplanes. I said, all right, cool. I mean, like they would never get it if I said, no, I'm a classical guitarist. What's that? Oh, well, and then I just sound like a pretentious person explaining it to them. But something I have to do though is that I make sure that when I'm filing my nails, that I'm always just going in the same direction. That's very important, because the nail fibers all grow from the bed out to the ends. And if you go back and forth, if you looked at your nail edge from like a micro surface, if this was your nail edge, you would have all these little fibers that go this way. So if you go back and forth with your file, you're kind of leaving them kind of spurred up, and your nail will never get fine. But if you follow your nail all in one direction, it kind of combs them over in one direction, and you don't hear them, and they don't burr as much, and they don't start coming apart as much. So now outside of so there's all kind of little things, and then just good old fashioned crazy glue is really good when everything breaks, and man, breaking a nail. It does happen a lot. I mean, man, I fix my own cars half the time if it's something I can fix. I mean, I try to feel like I'm manly enough to fix some of my cars, and I'll try to install the random ceiling fan. And
I'm not even gonna lie, I'm not manly at all as far as fixing
Yeah. I always call my dad. I'm like, so Dad, so now how do I do this? He's like, all right, well, you need to this, that. I'll have him on Skype, and he'll be talking me through. And then I do some gardening, especially now that we're in times like these, April of 2020. So anyways, I'm growing carrots and romaine lettuce and tomatoes and stuff outside, and I'm taking care of my plants before my Skype lessons start. My online lessons have to kick off for the day, and so anyways, but so the nails go through a lot, and they go through gloves, and I can't get out of laundry and the dishes. So I gotta be able to hit one. I mean, you can't say no to both of those. And right. And then folding clothes. I mean, it's pretty hard on the nails actually, because they'll grab any threads. If you have dress pants on, you reach in your back pocket where there's like a button, man, like that'll shear the nail right off your finger. You gotta be careful, So I try to keep them smooth, and then if I have to, I'll use a little bit of super glue, but I really try to be pretty easy with them. And then something else I do is that every day I warm up. I do that pumping nylon warm up. Yeah. That daily warm up. I do that every.
That's actually my arm on the cover there.
I thought it was familiar, man. Look at that, man. Yeah. I see the resemblance.
I've had that joke for 20 years at least.
That's great. I love it. And oh man, so good. And yeah, man, like I put the measurement on 50, and I start with that every day because the thing is, what I find is that with finger style, does it get easier? Well, yeah, of course it gets easier eventually, but there's still a time that 6 a.m. is still 6 a.m. And if you got to play somewhere at 9 a.m., say a special ceremony or something, I mean, man, it's really tough. Especially if it's a winter morning, and it's outside. In Florida, we actually have pretty cold indoor circumstances because most people will say, "Hey, man, put the thermostat on 65." So you walk into a hall and it's freezing, because you're like, "Man, turn off the AC. It's okay. We can have it at 70 and we'll be all right." But it's kind of funny. But so what I have to find though is that every day I feel, not every day, I'm doing a 20-day challenge right now. I'm in day 19 of it. Whenever we sign off, I'm going to record the 19th per hour study, and tomorrow I do number 20, which will put the end on that. And I'm sure
I did 11 of those for like a junior recital or something.
Oh, that's cool, man. The 11
which ones I did, but it was fun.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. And they're fun pieces. They kind of show me his language, and I kind of get to bask in a little bit. It's pretty fun. And I'll find that, now that I'm playing every day, it's a little, well, I'm playing, I'm recording every day. So my chops feel pretty good right now. But sometimes though, if there's a couple of days where there's just too many adulting to do or too many homeowner things to do to get to it, then that third day or fourth day, whenever I got to get back to it, I really got to get ready for it. And that's the thing. The hardest thing is getting back on the saddle. The saddle is so hard to get back onto, because I feel like, oh man, I'm a day away from even being warmed up. I'm 2 weeks away from being able to play that piece. I mean, like these are things that singer-songwriters probably don't really worry about too much, because they're probably worried about remembering their songs, but they're probably also worried about, being able to write their next song, too. Like they say, comedians are always worried about writing their last joke, So anyways, just getting back on the horse is a difficult thing. So when I find that I need to do that, I'm like, well, I got to get back into the club somehow, and I got to know the secret word to get into the club. I got to figure out how to get back into my guitar playing, and so I'll set the metronome on something very slow, like 50 beats per minute, like. That's probably 50 because I've heard it so many times. So now, and what I'll probably, that one was too early. But what I'll do from there is that if that's still too fast to do my pumping nylon left hand walking warm up, I'll do every other note. Click, click, note, click, and then I'll find that I only have to do that really for like 20 minutes, and then I'm kind of back in. I can start rooming about the cabin a little bit. I can start doing some other warm ups. I can start digging in a little more. I also have to be very.
What page is that on?
It's right in the dead center around 60, 61. It's daily warm up. Yeah, it's the chapter's daily warm up, and it's really, and that really kind of gets my hands reset again. And then I do the right hand walking, which is really unusual because you're walking along the strings with the right hand, alternating, which is an unusual technique. And so I just make that unusual technique part of my daily, and then it starts becoming easier. Yeah. And so anyways, but those are, if I don't do that, this doesn't really come together the same way. And the left hand used to not be any issue at all. But now I have a few moments where if I start pressing down too hard too soon, I'll pinch like a nerve at the end of my finger, and it'll give me like a little lightning bolt kind of sensation shock, which is because I didn't warm up the finger or the tissue around it. So I just got to be careful. I was I went to play a trio gig one night at a wine cellar right after work. I hadn't practiced all day, and it was like an 8-hour day of teaching classes. And I remember like our first song was Little Wing. And I'm playing my flying V, and I hit that D and bend it up to E for the solo, and I felt like a lightning bolt shot through my hand because I wasn't warmed up, and my pinky, every time I touched a string with it for the rest of that 4-hour gig, felt like I was touching like electricity with it every time. It hurt so bad. So I realized, I'm like, man, I got to take care of my left hand. All these years I thought I had it made with my left hand. I was like, oh, I don't have to worry about that. It'll work itself out. Well, now I have to kind of be careful about how hard I press, or I'm going to kind of do a little bit of damage. So I just squeeze I squeeze my fingertips to get the blood going to them, to get the tissue moving to them. And then what that does is it actually makes them feel much better. And then whenever I do my left hand walking exercise, I'll actually try to see if I can actually just make the notes buzz when I first play it, to see if I can play that light, and to see if I can controllably make them sound like they're buzzing. It's like, yeah, it's kind of unusual to try to fret every note and make every note buzz. And when you do that, you're like, oh, I'm barely pressing down. So then a clear note is like 1% effort more than a buzz note, really. And then you find out, oh, I've been pressing down way too hard for way too long. But it happens with both hands. And so I try to be real gentle with my hands. I don't try to play anything too fast too soon. But then I'm not so gentle that I don't, I try to exercise, I try to do push-ups and stuff like that, if I can, just because I spend so much time in the capacity of sitting and listening and teaching and practicing and such.
Yeah. Now, did he ever show you the French rap method?
Oh yeah.
Rap stuff. You're like,
right.
I did it for years. My wife is like, Nathan, what are you doing? And like, I'm doing my nails, Alicia.
That's right. That's right.
So like, you basically, for those who don't know, silk wrap or French wrap, you can get at Sally's. It's just like this little, you can cut them out. It's got a sticky back, so you stick it onto the nail, put the super glue on, hit it with the activator, let it dry, and then you just start buffing.
Yep.
And it gets smooth as glass. And
yep.
But my problem, same as you, like you're folding clothes, you're working on cars. I was doing all that stuff even a few years ago when I was working at the warehouse, just doing odds and end jobs. And I would go to reach for something and like it would hit the nail just right and like the glue would come off.
Yeah.
You have to go back home, super glue it back on, and then really every few days you'd have to take it all off and redo it. I'm like
hours.
It's a lot of work.
Hours. Yeah.
I wasn't even playing or practicing fingerstyle all that much.
Yeah.
But just to have the opportunity to do so. You had to have your nails. It's like, well, I got to keep doing it for my nails so I can practice. It's like,
oh, yeah.
I just can't do it anymore. So I actually have a nail system that I received last summer. Really procrastinating because I hadn't done a review on it yet. If they are listening to this, I'm getting right on it. I'm going to do it here soon.
Nice.
But it's called Tiptonics.
Oh, yeah.
It's a Delrin material.
Wow.
You kind of just put over your natural nail.
Yeah.
And there's a sticky part on the material itself that it sticks onto your nail. And then and one issue that I can see happening is like it's a little bulky on the edge. So what you're talking about, having the nail go down to where the nail and the skin meet, that's going to be a little different. You're going to have to kind of really probably file and shape them a little bit more.
Yeah.
But if you're in a pinch to where if you break a nail, you can just slap that sucker on there.
Yeah.
Now you got something that actually feels really natural, sounds pretty natural.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Just a real nail. And you don't have to go get an acrylic nail put on or.
Which those are horrible. Really, acrylic nails will just dissolve your existing nail, and they'll really just weaken it. So I can see. And then I used. I had a student that used, the comb binding that we use to bind books, like plastic binding. Yeah. Well, he found a supplier of clear comb binding, and so you don't have to worry about putting white or black, binding plastic on your nail. And he would use that because it's already bent, contoured, almost like a nail. And then he can kind of bend it a little bit to flatten it out a little bit more, bend it more to make it more concave if needed. And then he would set that on top of his nail and glue that and do the super glue in the accelerator. And so I did that when I first started playing steel string with the technique, because I didn't really want to play steel string for a lot of years because I was like, well, I don't want to ruin my nails. Also,
because it will. It'll destroy them.
Destroy them. Yeah, and the thing is that I didn't realize that there were finger style steel strings at the time either. I was just kind of oblivious to it. I'm in this world 98%, right? And so anyway, so what I didn't know that there was fingerstyle Martins. I didn't know that the triple O's were more like classical guitars or double O's were more like classical guitars. 12-fret acoustics, I didn't really know that was a thing. So I learned more about that, and I found, oh man, there's Martin guitars that are very similar. I'll grab it really quick because it's right across the room, so it's a very similar instrument to a classical instrument. In fact, when they were first made in 1919, they were made for gut or steel strings.
Look at that. That's cool.
So it has a slotted headstock, which I like the way it puts the angle on the string coming back that way. It's also easier to tune. I don't have to put my arm sideways to tune it.
Right.
I love tuning these kind of headstocks. If I had an electric guitar with a slotted headstock, I would love it, you know. But and then the nut isn't quite as wide as the classical, but it's wider than like a dreadnought. So a dreadnought's like electric is like a 1 and 11/16. Yeah. This is 1 and 13/16, and some would even argue it's 1 and 7/8. Some of them are 1 and 7/8. So and then the spacing is a little wider here. I think it's 2 and it's a 2.25, I think, or something like that. So and then I put some stainless steel frets on it that are like a medium, like more of a tall fret, more tall narrow. My classical has more of a tall fat fret, which is good for the big scale. But these are more tall narrows. Stainless steel. It's a different sound than nickel. It's a little brighter, a little zingier. Right.
But they don't wear out as much either. Like you don't get in the frets or any of that.
Oh yeah. And so whenever I started playing this, I was originally putting like elixir strings on, thumb picks, and I was gluing on plastic, and I was trying to play real loud and everything, and I was just destroying everything. I mean, I was destroying my nails. I was creating fungal problems by having moisture trapped in between these hot, humid Florida days, and then the guitar really wasn't wanting heavy strings on it. And so one day I thought, man, let me just put the silken steel strings on it. It's what people really like to put on these guitars. And I'll just be okay with it not being a Canon if it's not a Canon. Mm-hmm. And so I put another K&K in it, just like the other guitar has, a little volume wheel in the inside, and they're your typical strap placement. So it feels a lot like the other one, a little bit bigger in the body. If I would have done it over again, I probably would have gotten a 00 instead of a 000, because I could have bought one flight case and put both guitars in it, you know, or whatever. But whatever, you live and you learn.
So the 000 is like smaller than a 00. Like is it the smallest body Martin has?
It's the biggest of the small bodies. So It goes to 15 inches from the widest bit of the lower bout. Towards my classical guitar is about 13.5, you know, which is like almost like an O size, you know. So I probably would go for an O or a 00 next time around if I was to do that. Just have a smaller guitar. I'm actually liking the shoulder position of a smaller guitar, you know, having my shoulder lower. And so, but what I liked about this is that this gave me a chance to do a lot of cool little things. It gave me a chance to use that kind of layered approach of fingerstyle that I learned from classical guitar on steel string. I got a chance to work on nail placement and tone. Once I switched out of using phosphor bronze to using silken steel strings and just allowing the guitar just to be what it naturally wants to be at the volume it wants to be.
What brand of strings is it?
Man, I'll tell you, the ones I like the best are the Labella silken steel.
Silken steel.
Yeah. So basically,
they're just regular acoustic strings, but they're like a certain.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So basically, like a phosphor bronze strings, phosphor is simply wrapped around nickel, right? Like a hex core nickel.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So these are actually a nickel wrapped, like an electric strings are nickel wrapped around steel. These are nickel, or they call it steel, nickel wrapped around silk, like literally silk from like a spider.
Interesting.
And so they sound halfway between a nylon string and a steel string.
Okay.
And so they have a pretty warm sound. Since the mic sounds kind of weird, but I do have a thing or two on my Spotify playing some steel string as well. Yeah. Anyways, it has a lot of sustain, which I really enjoy a lot. It's a little bit more sustained, a little chimier than a nylon string, and I can still play most of the repertoire on it. Of course, my pop standards sound way better on this, or they pop out way more, I should say. My swing and jazz tunes kind of swing a little bit more with the kind of sound of a steel string. And then if I go into any dad, gad, or open tunings, they're really fun too. It just kind of has a sound. It's like a new fretboard to play with. It's like a new set of games, you know. And so I really enjoy open D, which is also called Piedmont tuning. And I also enjoy dad, gad, and also just a couple other modified tunings that are pretty fun outside of the old.
So if you wanted a traditional acoustic sound, you wouldn't use those strings. Right. Or would you? I mean, is it just different? I mean, I've never heard them really.
Yeah. they're a little bit more mellow, but they still have that little zing that you would have from a steel string, but they're more mellow. So they have a little bit more of a, I don't know if you could hear it here, but so I don't know if it sounds like anything on that.
Yeah, it's still kind of glitchy. But yeah,
sorry.
If you have a clip or something, I can interject.
Yeah.
I've what that sounds like.
Yeah, I have a little dadgad clip. So yeah, so what I like applying to the steel string there are all those cool techniques from classical guitar, like the sequential plant, the full plant. Those things still work amazingly well. Playing Bach works amazingly well on a steel string.
I like the Robert Plant technique myself.
Oh yeah, man. Robert that's amazing. Yeah, so I really enjoy it. The only thing that's really weird about this guitar is the V neck at the back. It's got a V-shaped neck. Yeah. And it's a little different. I know why it's there now. I didn't understand it first, but I know that it's for like fingerstyle blues players when they want to bend. They've got like almost like a fulcrum right here to bend against. Totally. So I mean, I can really see that if I had a Telecaster with a shape or a Strat, I'd probably be really more inclined to bend even more. So then what I play on this, I play fiddle tunes, I play folk music. I'm going to start a couple new hashtags just to kind of shake things up for my own Instagram. A folk music Friday or folk song Friday, a Targa Tuesday, maybe a metal Monday or something, and just to kind of shake it up a little bit, and just continue the search and the journey. But this is what I play. Most of the folk songs that I play. Most of the Celtic stuff is played on this. Of course, Celtic stuff sounds great on nylon string too. Yeah. Jazz sounds great on nylon string too. It's that warm sound. So I feel like I cover a lot of bases with these two. And then I have a go down Fifth Avenue arch top that I have with I've got the P90 on it, and I also have a K&K pickup under the arch top bridge on that. And I play polka music for Oktoberfest with a accordion virtuoso. And so he and I, we wear lederhosen and we do a full Oktoberfest show, like literally roll out the barrel, and it's all German drinking songs. And basically like we played Tampa Oktoberfest, Sydney Rocks Beach Oktoberfest. We're supposed to play Panama City Oktoberfest. We'll see if they still collect, if we're going to be gathering in September or not as masses. And, So anyway, so that's all. So that gives me a chance to play a little bit more of a gypsy jazz style and play a little bit of Django.
We're going to need to see a picture, Jimmy.
Man,
I need you to send me a picture of the lederhosen so we can check this out in full.
I definitely will. And I'll show you when I play that stuff. There's two picks that I use that I really love a lot, and I'll show you these picks because they're awesome. And one of them is made by one of your neighbors over there. But anyways. This is the Wagen pick or Wagen. Yeah. It's like it's like about a 3 millimeter.
Yeah.
And then I have the V-pick Psycho. Yeah. Man, what a great pick.
I got
nice.
Dimension.
Yep. That's a good one. That's a pretty fat one.
I'm pretty sure I was at the NAMM show a few years ago and I got some of these. And there's a funny story. I don't know if you want to hear this or not, but I'm going to tell it to you anyway. When Feedback Revival toured Europe, I think we were in Spain playing one of our shows, and I had these picks. They're like $20 picks. It's crazy.
Yeah.
$15, $20, whatever they are.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I brought them to Europe, but why not? We were playing the show. I had some picks down by my pedal board because, when you drop a pick, you need to have another pick somewhere. And at the end of the show, like all but one pick was like gone. I'm like, some Spaniard took my pick. Yeah,
no kidding.
But I think this is the only one I have left. I don't know anything else I have. But but they're cool. Now supposedly when your finger warms up, they're supposed to be like kind of sticky.
Yeah.
I never got that sensation with mine. I don't know what I'm doing anything wrong or something or what, but I don't know. Any secrets? Any secrets to the V picks I should know about?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I had the Insanity one, the one that's really thick, and so the whole idea of having a thick, a very large pick like that is really, if you take your hand and where it normally wants to fall open. Like some players will actually measure what that is, and they'll measure how many millimeters that is and try to find a pick that fits into that. You can't even fix clear; you can't really see it, but it kind of fits into that groove. And then it's supposed to make it to where you don't have to hold it as hard. And then as your body temperature goes around, it's supposed to warm up, which I do feel some tackiness from it whenever I do that. Okay. But maybe my hands are hotter and temperature wise. I'm not sure. It could. I'm sure there's some other contributing factors. But I found that it really made for like gypsy jazz playing for using it the back and forth action. It was a lot easier to hold it and hold the pick loosely while still doing that type of thing. And that was a lot of fun with the polka band or whatever. And which most of those songs are just 1-5-1, and then it goes up a fourth, and it goes up another fourth, and sometimes another fourth. So you play in weird keys. You play like F and B flat and E flat all the time. A flat, yeah, it's ridiculous. But the accordion player, he is this young virtuoso, and he was just like just all through it. Just could rip everything apart, and it was really something to behold. But anyways, so I use the arch top for that, and then I haven't really had too many applications for my electrics lately.
You still have all the electrics, right? You didn't sell them. Anything?
I didn't sell them. Okay. I didn't sell them, so I still have them, and there'll be a few projects that'll require them later. I'm not, that's a pretty one.
Here's my I in the past few years I have discovered Reverend guitars.
Yeah.
And they're out of Ohio. They're not made in America, but what guitar is these days.
Right.
But,
no kidding.
But I did a video a few weeks ago, about a month or so ago, on the Fender Player Strat. Mm-hmm. And it's a great guitar. But at the time I was working at Guitar Center, so I got a good discount on it. But I was on the Reverend site, and I saw that they had a Strat style guitar. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to keep it all in the Reverend family. I'm going to return the Player Series Strat. I'm going to get this. And this is avocado green.
Yeah.
Which is super cool.
Yeah.
And, it feels, I've had 30 different amps, 20 some odd different guitars over the years. The Reverend guitars, for me, they feel great. They sound great, and you see them on all my YouTube videos whenever I'm demonstrating like a head rush or an amplifier or something.
Very cool.
But yeah, just look at the back of the neck there. It has like a little bit of to it. Really pretty.
Beautiful finish. Yeah.
Yeah, I love Reverend guitars. So.
Yeah. Wow. Very cool.
But going back to the nail thing is like, since I never could really get my nails really in shape the way they should be, like I just kind of gravitate more towards electric guitar.
Sure.
That's just the kind of world I like being in. But I still love playing fingerstyle stuff, and I've written some tunes over the years. My main goal. I need to make a goal before the summer. I need to release some fingerstyle stuff I've written.
Nice.
Just to have it out there.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I need to get back into my pumping nylon book and do some, even if it's like 10 minutes. I tell my students all the time, it's like, look, if you got 5 minutes in a metronome, you can work on something.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, in case in point, like with these challenges that I have every day of doing these Brower studies, I'm, I'll often have to face, it's quite a challenge, because what I have to do is I have to literally learn a piece of music in a day, and record it that night. That's what the challenge is. And I do it 20 days in a row. Now, the first 5 I taught, for years. First 6 I taught for years. So those were pretty easy. I might have recorded those in one day, and I just released them one day at a time. But then from the 7th one now to the 20th, I'm having to learn them every single day, and then I'm having to record them that night. And so I have to be very, very creative because so it takes me, it's about a 3-hour venture from when I start the piece and I start practicing it. I say 3 hours plus 30 years, right, of playing. So
totally, yeah.
So
it all adds up to one magical moment, right?
Right, and so what I had to do with every one of these is since I have to really budget myself 3 hours, especially if I'm teaching for 10 hours a day, a 10-hour a day, man, it's really hard to get up there and sit in that same position 3 more hours and try to get those takes right, and then every once in a while the AC kicks on. I'm like, oh, let me wait a few minutes for it to kick off, and then I'll do, and something else will happen. All right, and so typically about 3 hours, but every piece has something that's kind of weird, and this one had this measure, and this is, and I was like, okay, so where's my way in? What's my way in? What's the lowest common denominator? And if you see, I just started writing over where the beats should be. That's 4/4 time. And then those groupings are each a beat, with the exception of beat 4, which is split across 7 divisions. But anyways, so I had to wonder like where the first 16th was, and then how that's followed by an 8th note. That would be where the second 2 16th notes are. And then there's the last 16th note. And then we have, the 4 divisions on the beat 2, which we have triplet, and then the last 2 are tied as 1 or an 8th note.
Right.
And so I just had to find a speed that I could somewhat get into that at, because I knew, well, I can't just say, oh, I don't feel like it, because I said, no, I'll accept the challenge. And that's the definition of a challenge, is it has to be challenging, and 20 days in a row of learning a new piece and uploading it is a I don't know if I'll do it again like that. I mean, of course I can't do those again because I've already done them, right?
Right.
So it wouldn't be the same challenge. But it's been a fun challenge because I have to be okay with it by the time before I go to bed, and that's not something I was, classical music doesn't train you to have a song done in a day and go to bed and sleep okay. It's like that should be a few weeks, that should be a couple months. And but I think that over time, as I play thousands of gigs over the years, up until last year, I was doing about 100 gigs a year, and that was since about maybe 2010 or so almost 10 years of that, and then I started scaling it back. I started saying, no, I don't do those kind of gigs anymore. I don't want to do this kind of gig anymore. I don't want to do any more sunset ceremonies. I'm getting sunburned left and right, and I don't want to go out like that kind of thing. So, but I was always having to learn the song of the summer and make arrangements. And after a while, you can get song of the summered out, because after a while, you're learning a song for a season, and then that song's not timeless enough to hold itself throughout the years. So you learn the next,
like Justin Bieber songs, or
yeah. Well, it's interesting. Okay, so the first weddings I ever did were when I was like 18 and 19 years old, and it was like Pachelbel's Canon and D. Very common. Classic. But then, classic. But then come around 2010 to 2012, like it seemed like brides started asking for a lot other different things, and that's by the time that those Twilight girls got old enough to get married, and they want to have that Twilight song played, and then there's
10,000 times or 10,000
years, 1,000 years,
1,000 years, whatever.
Yeah. And so, man, every time, a young bride says, "Oh, I would like this," I'd be like, "Oh, I'm going to go through so much work to get that done, and then I'm going to play it for 30 seconds." She's not even going to hear. She's going to be, focusing on since they're having their wedding outside, they're going to be focusing on the wind and sweating and the sun and maybe I don't even know whatever nature throws at us. The last thing that they're going to pay attention is the 30 seconds I'm playing this, where I got to taper it off as soon as she stops walking. I just felt like I was bidding myself out, learning all these tunes for all these weddings. And after a while, I thought, man, I can really lose myself in this. I can just chase the next song of the summer and just always say, oh yeah, I'll keep arranging every Ed Sheeran song that comes out, and all that. But man, I mean, but then in 5 years, no one's going to ask for that song ever, and then they'll never ask for it again, and so that was more costly to, during that amount of time, if you think from a business perspective. So, but so I wouldn't want to spend a lot of time doing them. So I started kind of doing them a couple days before, and eventually after I did 100 or so weddings, I would listen to the track and I'd be like, yeah, I can put that together the morning of. I won't worry about that. And it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to deliver this amazing performance, from the morning of, but I could deliver the melody on a silver platter for the amount of time that I needed to get it across for the bride to just stop at the end of the altar, and I taper off and disappear, and so that kind of prepared me though for learning quickly. And also I sight read all day with my students. I'm always looking at music, 10 hours a day, just about. I'm sight reading with my students. So a lot of this, this Brower, this 20-day challenge I'm on day 19 of, it's luckily it's using all those cumulative experiences. And that's where that technique, that warm up every day for 20 years feels good, because it applies to those studies. And then next week I'll start doing something else to reach out to everyone and post more as well.
Well, that really, I guess, kind of solidifies the whole conversation here. And really what the goal of my website here in the last probably 2 years has been is this concept of creating a confident musician. And really I has like a Doc Talk series. I would kind of sit down in front of a camera and talk about different stuff. But I really, in the last year, my main desire was to have conversations just like this, talk with another musician. And I think when other people hear your journey and like your struggles and your successes, that gives them more confidence to then go out and then, just kind of puts them at ease. It's like, you don't have to have it all figured out.
Right. Exactly.
Nobody has it figured out.
Oh no.
We're all just flying by the seat of our pants.
Exactly. And man, and there's times during those performances where and I'm like, oh yes, the finger did not give out. It held just long enough, and then someone will watch it and they'll say something, oh man, flawless. Or they'll say, man, you did this or this. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I was hanging on by the seat of my pants in some of those moments, just trying to stay focused through them. But I have to say though, just that whole thing of reaching out and to help create confident musicians, that is such an important goal. And I find that with my older students that come to me, they'll ask me, they'll say, so what's the difference between an amateur and a pro? Because there's a lot of good amateurs, right? And I said, yeah. And they said, but what's the main difference? And I said, well, have you ever seen the pro musician on the stage where someone's like, oh, I can do that, and then someone else will kind of, cattily say to them, oh yeah, but you're not, kind of thing, right? And I think that the professional finishes a bit more than the amateur. They finish, they finish learning the song, and even if that song has some kind of just mundane guitar part, they count it out. They count the 16 bars. They count the fourth beat. They listen to how the third beat sits over the first beat, even if they're playing something simple. And it can just be what it is. The guitar doesn't have to be all these things. It can just be what it is. The guitar part can be the guitar part. It can. You don't have to redefine a piece whenever you play it. You just have to play the piece. It's pretty good. Like the band leaders. They always tell bass players. They always say, "Hey man, just play the song. Just play the song." And I mean, like
bass solo or anything like that.
Yeah. And I think that we get caught up in the gymnastics or what we can't do, and we try to minimize ourselves with that. And but in reality, everyone has some kind of shortcoming. I remember whenever we were sitting at Bill's house after Anna Vidovic's concert. Were you around for that? The guitar festival?
Yeah, I was there.
Okay.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, right?
She's amazing too. Beautiful.
She's got everything.
Everything. Yeah.
The world is her oyster, and she's amazing. And at Bill's house, we were passing around a guitar or something, and I played a little flamenco thing that I learned from Juan Marina Moreno over here in one of those expensive lessons where he didn't write down anything. And she was like, oh, like what's that? And I said, it's just a little bulerías that I play around. And she's like, oh, cool. Is that written down? I'm like, no, it's just something I kind of mess with. It's kind of a pattern I improvise over. And she's like, oh, yeah. And I said, oh, do you ever improvise? And she's like, oh, never, no. Just like hands off, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that, I think that's a shame though. Not that I want to hear her improvise, but I think that we shouldn't feel like, we have to be a professional and monetize and have the feeling of being able to say, oh, I want to be able to monetize this skill I have. You know, we can refine skills in our own interests, and we can just enjoy the path to that. You know,
well, that's what my 2-year college, the Siena State jazz director always told us, is like the difference between an amateur and a professional is the professional gets paid.
Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
I mean, totally. Yeah, I could get that. But I mean, that's kind of where I want to try to gear, lead people to, is like whether you're the guy just playing acoustic guitar on the back porch, playing to the frogs, or you're playing in front of 10,000 people or millions of people in a huge stadium. It's like you can have just as much confidence playing on the back porch as you can playing in front of millions of people. It's just you have to put in the work. You have to practice. You have to be prepared for those situations where you are in front of the big group and you're doing the thing. But it's like, that's what I love about your story is like you started off young, getting the magazines, playing in the bands, pursuing a higher degree of education through college.
Right.
Now you're teaching other people the same love of music that you have.
Yeah, and I'm very fortunate to be in that position, and really I think that what I tell all my students, especially now, I also do a community college teaching job at St. Pete College, cool. and a lot of students there are retirees, and they're retirees that play tennis and they go to class and they do things. You know, it's kind of like a
paint class to them almost.
Yeah. Oh, it's great. And then, I always tell them, and I tell everyone, I even tell the younger ones too, I'd say, you have to just learn to be patient with yourself, and I think that, and so someone will say, but how did you get to wherever you are, and I said, I've just been patient with myself for a longer period of time. And really, and when I tell someone to practice something slow, and it's that really slow 1 movement per click kind of playing where it's like, you can't even recognize a tune. It's not a life sentence to play that slow for that tune. It just has to go through that channel before it gets a little bit faster. How long is that? Well, they seem to be more at ease when I tell them, so that'll take you 10 minutes to do it at that speed. And I want you to do it without a mistake 3 times before you add 8 beats to it. Now, try to go through 4 speeds, which would mean that you'd have to spend an hour doing that. But then the next day, after you warm up, start midway to where you worked up to, and then try to go beyond where you went the day before.
Yeah.
And then
overlap.
Yeah.
The tempo.
And it just kind of you're just kind of ironing the wrinkles out doing that. And I said, and just be patient with the process of doing it. And it's okay. And they'll say, but do you really practice that slow? And I'm like, yeah, I really do. And I do that because it puts all the spaces where they all need to go. If this is the 8th note, then I know that 2 of these is a quarter note. I know that 4 of these is a half note. And I have to put that mental spacer in there so I don't make that long note shorter, which will make all the shorter notes shorter, which makes everything rush, and then there's no groove. So I've heard some of the blues musicians I was talking about, and I'm not naysaying any blues musicians. I assure you, but they'll say
it can be stuck up though. I mean, just admit it.
Yeah. And I had this particular guy, and he was talking during a performance, so he was kind of shouting with a beer in his hand. And he said, oh, yeah. He said, I tried to go to that college, HCC. He said, but, the guy told me I had to play Bach. And it's like, and he's like, man, like Bach doesn't have any soul, man, and I'm like, oh, man. I'm like, I wouldn't go there. I wouldn't throw out the baby with the bathwater and say Bach has no soul. Come on. And the guy's like, yeah, but but everything's written with. I said, man, that was 270 years ago. I said, if he was born today, he'd be playing synthesizers and Moogs and electric guitars. He'd be doing all this stuff. I'm like, he didn't have the luxury of a recording industry and electricity and innovations of the instrument and the platform and the way it's dispersed.
Yeah, he had to write it down because there's no other way to capture it,
Because how would we know Bach if the last person that heard Bach played, that knew Bach, died? We would have no Bach,
Sad.
Oh gosh, I mean, imagine all the melodies we wouldn't have to hum along to steal, to challenge us, And so, like I try to offer a little bit of that perspective, but I probably just seem like a, curmudgeonous old, teacher or whatever. But, but just to say, hey man, like that was the only source they had. And in grad school, I actually had to find out to really appreciate notated music, because I took a class that almost destroyed me that was called The Notation of Polyphonic Music from the year 900 to 1750. And that class made me transcribe early tablatures, and I just want to show you what one of them looked like, just to give you a clue. This is a no joke.
And it's on your phone, by the way. It's crazy. What? You can't even read it.
Yeah, it's a lot of focus. But anyways, so
nuts.
So it was just an unusual class. I'll see if there's any clearer examples. And then other forms of tablature. And man, I realized that it took hundreds of years for music to look so cleanly represented on a staff. And I really appreciated that after I saw the journey. Now we have like
Sibelius and like Guitar Pro and whatever else. Is like, come on.
Oh yeah, piece of cake, man. And by the way, I love Guitar Pro, man. It's a fraction of the price of those other ones. And man, there's so many things in that format. I use that with my students. They have it on their iPads, on their phones. They put the tempo down to half speed and play along, and they watch the cursor go to their note. It's pretty good resource, But I mean, so that's all they had. They had a feather in a bottle of ink, and so it's really interesting, because like whenever you see like Bach's handwriting, you start seeing a lot of soul. You start seeing phrasing. You start seeing all kinds of things that kind of emerge out of his handwriting. You see phrase markings. Let me see if I can see any of it, if I can bring any of it up here. But anyways, but these are all things that Bill made us read when we're there. These are tablatures that are with letters instead of numbers, A, B, C, D for frets instead of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, and then the Spaniards, they had it down. They used numbers like we did. They put the rhythms above it. So if they had except for their strings were flipped up, their presentation was flipped around the other way. So it was more like a mirror. It's like a mirror image, like you had like your sixth string was on top, and then eventually they went in and they flipped it around and tried to make it look from low to high, so it resembled some sheet music a little bit more. But it's just very fascinating how this, handwriting, this is like, from a Baroque composer, Henry Purcell. We can actually see in some of these cases how they would want things phrased by even though there weren't phrase markings then, they would sometimes illustrate the phrasing with the 2 bars over the 16th notes. They'd have them like that and such. Yeah. So you kind of see them. I love how in the Renaissance there was like chord charts. Look at that. You can see like a D chord, A minor. That's from the 1670s. Alphabeto system is what it's called. So like these are all kind of different ways, like the Baroque guitar, for example. Like whenever I study this and explore this, I realized something about this instrument. This instrument was made from 15. It was made the 1550s. Well, I should say a little bit later than that. But it was played all the way. It was played for almost 175 years before the guitar changed. this type of guitar.
Right.
And it was illustrated in artwork all throughout the period. And it's just pretty fascinating that this style of guitar would just kind of just stick around for so long, that this style of guitar was around just as long as the versions of guitars that we know now. There's a very famous painting of a Baroque guitar.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's really cool that guitar existed and was being played for like 175 years, and how those guitarists were doing different strumming. They were turning into a percussive instrument, and it's just so cool to try to kind of think back to a society that would be wholly entertained by that, you know, and how that was enough, and to think, you know, how eventually the German Marcel made the metronome, and how that became a standard. How Hertz came up with tuning. Old man Hertz came up with the 440. You know.
Yeah.
And so all those innovations. I mean, like it all accumulated. You know, notice how Bach's he has the Preludes and Fugue for the well-tempered clavier, because he wasn't sure what the real tuning was, because it wasn't A440 back then. It was still floating around.
I only play in 432 myself.
Really, you know,
it just gets my groove going. You know, I don't know what it is.
Interesting enough, the Bavarian accordion that my accordion player plays with in the polka band, it's an A432, and
really?
Man, I love it. I got to say, I might even convert everything else over to that, because I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed singing with that too.
But then you can't play along with your favorite classic rock songs. I mean,
that's true, man. That's true, man. Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of interesting how that tuning has such a fatness to it, you know, and how that influences how you play.
I was totally joking, by the way. I'm sure you knew that, but I need to try playing 432 for like a week just to see if my ear like.
Well, have you seen all the?
To it? I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of articles on it right now, and I thought it was unusual.
It's like the sound of the universe or something. It's like you're one with nature if you play in 432 versus 440 or.
Yeah. It's funny, but straight up, like by the kid in the accordion, he said, "Hey man, we have to do A432," and I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, man, it's what all." He said, "It's what all Oberkroner music is in." I said, "Oberkroner, what's that?" He said, "Oberkroner music." He said, "Polka bands." He said, "Slavic waltzes, Slavic and then like this kid, he lives in the world of polka.
Oh yeah.
So he
lives in Sheboygan.
Yeah, man.
You know the Home Alone quote.
Oh yeah, man. Oh yeah.
Sheboygan, where we just hop in the truck. You know.
We are huge in Sheboygan. Yeah, exactly. Totally. I love John Candy. Oh my gosh, John Candy, Uncle Buck. You know, my favorite, but that's not Uncle Buck. Is that Uncle Buck or no?
It is.
Great.
No, Home Alone is the polka thing, but
right.
Uncle Buck is he's flipping the huge like 5 foot wide pancake or whatever.
I love John Candy. Oh, I love the reference. Yeah, man. So yeah, you know, so just there's a lot of articles on that, and it's very interesting how tuning works, like that anyway, how it influences. But anyways, there's so much hoopla over 432 right now. I'm still kind of buying into it. But the singing, I felt like singing with it was easier. But I guess I don't even know. I guess those.
I'm going to have to do some more research on it, and maybe we can get together again sometime here in the near future. We can talk about all things 432. That'd be fun. Yeah,
man. Exactly, man. Yeah.
Let's end it here. Let's wrap it up because I know you got to do some Brower stuff. But give us a for the classical guitar beginner. Like, where do you need to start? Like, give us a book. We need to go look at like some studies or etudes or whatever. And then give me what's your favorite like classic rock song? Just do those two questions.
Okay. All right. Yeah, like my one go-to for a beginning classical guitar student is Pumping Nylon. Definitely get that book. It gets you started. It won't give you the beginning tunes that you need to play, but it'll get you started with all the techniques that you would need. And then outside of that, our friend Roger Hudson has a fantastic method with a lot of modern pieces that also transfer to fingerstyle guitar that also have some jazz harmony. And so I've been giving that to a lot of my students. Roger Hudson's method for guitar. Fantastic. Cool. Right. Favorite classic rock song? That's going to be a hard one. And I've actually been listening to a lot of Hank Williams for the past 6 months, like everything he's ever done. Hank Williams Sr., the old man. He's one of my favorite musicians. And then I would say that, like what is a classic rock song that really knocks it out for me? Wow, man, I don't know. It's so massive. I mean, I love Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. I love that song. I love what it is. But then, man, I mean, I also love, there's so many Zeppelin songs that are great too. But let's cap it off with, I think Sgt. Pepper is about as good as I can give for a favorite classic rock song. Hardly any guitar playing in that. I'm sorry, that doesn't sound like as good of a one, does it now? Because the guitar playing side.
It's fine. I mean, that's what you like. That's great.
But it hits me like a ton of bricks, man.
That's all that matters.
It's a singable melody, and I think that's what I like about it. Of course, Bohemian Rhapsody and things like that, big rock tunes, but I think nothing just hits out like that. Dun 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 da da dun da da. That George's Stratty tone on that coming in. It's so gnarly. It's so treble boosted. It's so nasty. But at the same time, it's that. I mean, if that was a smooth tone, it wouldn't be that song. It wouldn't be Sgt. Pepper without that. Yeah,
playing through like a Fender Twin or something like with the really high room tube amp. It just wouldn't be the same effect.
Yeah, man. And Paul and Ringo just holding it out in that drone, dun 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 dun. It's so powerful. Big flourishes. It's wonderful to be here. Certainly a thrill. All these things come in. He's talking about stopping a show. Really would like to know singers going to sing a song and wants you all to sing along. I mean, just there's so many hype elements in that song. I think that are just like, wow, how do you outdo that one? But I'm sure someone out there will say, oh, there's this 1,000 songs, that do that. So, but that's my song of the moment, I think. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. That's great, Jamie. Well, I'm glad that internet and social media has brought us back together.
Yes, sir.
My days at MTSU, I would not trade those for anything. I think it was a great experience. And yeah, just pleasure sitting with you again. Even over Skype, it's just as good.
Exactly.
Well, I'm going to be inspired now to go work on my nails, get some classical pumping nylon stuff.
Nice.
Maybe I can play a tune and you can critique me or something.
Oh man, well I'd happily listen to you anytime, man. And just seeing your page and what you're trying to do and your channel, it's a fantastic channel. I've subscribed to it over a year ago when you launched it. I love what you're doing. I love the mission. And my students enjoy your head rush examples of creating signal chains. So really good work you're doing there, man. I'm really honored that you wanted to talk to me and have me on the podcast. I really appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, go practice, Jimmy. I know you got a lot of Broward stuff to do, and we're gonna get it cut off here. So
sounds good, buddy. All right, Nathan. Yeah. And my handler on Instagram is just Jimmy Moore Guitar, and that's where all my Broward studies can be found. Awesome, Nathan. Thank you, sir.
All right, Jimmy, you have a good rest of your night, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, sir. All right, have a good night. Stay healthy.
See ya.
Take care.